So just imagine you're in the Middle Ages. You're like, you know what? I'm horny. I'm going to cook up some homemade lube. And then you end up getting burnt at the fucking stake for it.
That would be the, like, 5th worst thing that's ever happened to me because I was horny.
I think that would still be my number one, gotta be honest.
Young money is the roster and a monster crew. And I'm pull up in the bank with a funny face. And if I'm fake, I ain't noticed cause my money ain't.
Welcome to My Brother, My Brother's Friend and Me, a podcast where two ex-evangelical siblings and an ex-Catholic non-sibling watch Christian media and either praise or condemn it. I'm Aaron.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Michael.
And this week on Michael's Spooky Season, we watch the 2015 historical thriller, The Witch. Before we run naked through the woods at midnight, be sure to like and comment on this video, subscribe to our channel, and follow us on Twitter at MBMBFandMe. Michael, our, what is a good title? Our coven leader. How about you, take us into this one?
I hate to jump in immediately with a correction, Aaron. It's actually The Vitch.
Okay, yeah. Listen, I have it spelled VV in my notes, but I don't know how to pronounce that without making everyone immediately hate us.
It is pronounced witch, but they just were stupid back then. English didn't get intelligent until... I don't know if I want to make that stance.
Yeah, let's not talk about how smart the English are, especially after watching this movie.
Yes, please.
The English and their language, bad.
So I'm going to go in a little bit of background. I'm going to avoid my fun facts until they're relevant. So I'm going to go in my personal background. I watched this film a few years back, and I was really unsure about my opinion on it. I probably watched it in 2015 when it came out, and I was unsure because I didn't find it like, oh my God, so scary. But then I realized a week later I was still thinking about it, and it completely changed my mind about the film. Like, anything that sticks with you like that is definitely, to me, worthwhile. So I'm a big fan. And then upon second watching, I was like, no, I fucking love this. This is like a top 5 for me.
Yeah, I mean, as far as background goes, I finished watching this movie 15 minutes ago, and I'm so excited to talk about it.
So what I do like about this movie is it actually took 4 years to make.
Oh my God. Which
is exceptionally long in filmmaking. And it's not because it was in developmental hell. In fact, like, studios loved the idea about it. It's just they spent so much of that time, upwards of 2 years, doing research and reading like historical texts from the era. It's why the title is stylized with the 2 V's instead of the W. It's because in every writing you have from the era, that's how they would spell witch when referring to an actual witch.
And, like, you can tell immediately with just how they speak, which is what I hinted at last podcast. They speak in a dialogue that would have been similar to the time period, which is a staple of his. If you watch his other movie, The Lighthouse, they literally talk in, like, sailor jargon the entire time, making it an impossible viewing. And this one, it was audible.
So I will say, like, the dialect in the film is not only accurate for the time period, they actually use Old Essex as the source for the dialect, which is where the family says they come from. So, like, it's clear the director did his homework, and this is his directorial debut. So I gotta give him some credit, considering this is the first film you directed. Oh, I'm wrong. He directed 2 films before. This is... He's more known as a production designer, though, so he's directed 3 entire films, I believe. 4 entire films, so he's not exactly prolific, not someone that's like a household name just yet, but yeah, I mean, you can see the homework that he did, and you can see, like, you know, the family's history is real for the time period, and I think that makes it a better film. I know that probably annoyed you, but that surprises me that our historian is like, ugh, historical accuracy.
Here is my pain with historical accuracy. I like the points in this movie of religious persecution, where they develop the narrative of the Rhode Island. That's the colony that kicks them out, correct?
They called it a Commonwealth.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's like The only Commonwealth I know is Kentucky.
Virginia.
I don't think we're there.
Virginia.
Virginia, the Commonwealth.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
So they were actually from Plymouth.
Oh, okay, that tracks more than Rhode Island. I like the historical accuracies with that one. My issues that sometimes with historical accuracies, a lot of times I feel people like lose the forest for the trees. And he doesn't do that, so I will give him that. I feel like a lot of times historians would take, like, oh, they speak in that oldie-timey Englishy, but they get, like, everything, like, important incorrect. But I will give him the point that he gets the important stuff correct, and he gets the non-important stuff correct, even though he doesn't have to.
Well, yeah, and that commitment to historical accuracy actually extends to the soundtrack, too. So this is my first fun fact, because we actually open with some creepy music. And this is what has gotten the film favorable comparisons to The Exorcist, is the soundtrack and, like, how well that fits with the plot. And so he actually vetoed every time the sound designer came over and was like, hey, I have this cool track. He vetoed anything that had electronic music whatsoever. So any instrument that was electronic, anything that wouldn't have existed at the time, more or less.
Can we all agree that this guy would have been great to have work for you, but terrible to work for?
Yes, absolutely. Like, that's the thing. Like, God, I kind of hate it when people do that, because, like, you're making it unnecessarily hard on yourself. Like, so that way you get, like, you know, it fits your theme or whatever. Like, man, I thought the soundtrack was exceedingly scary, and also I don't know that I would have not been immersed if I heard a fucking 808 in there.
That, to me, is my problem with his type of filmmaking. And it works for a lot of people, and this isn't a movie that, like, I despise or I think is, like, despicable. It is one that I go, not for me. In the fact of, like, the intensity that I feel that this movie was made with for the little parts, I think can sometimes lose the greater parts, if that makes any sense. The silence I'm going to take as a no. I'm loopy today.
So for me, I'm going to be honest, it completely works.
Okay.
Like, I think it's a pain in the ass. I think that truthfully, like, that sort of attention to detail with soundtracks, that's the kind of person that you're like, fucking Jim over there, or whatever this guy's name is. I already forgot it, guys. But, you know, like, you're mad at your asshole boss, but then you get at the end of a project, you've made a multi-million-dollar movie, and now suddenly you're the hottest person in demand for soundtracks and for score making. So, like, yeah, I'm sure it's annoying, but I'm sure it also opened a lot of doors and is a success, right? Like, I'll be honest, the soundtrack made me feel things. Like, we knew what we were getting this early on with the, like, opening music being so dark and, like, discordant.
Yeah, I mean, do you know anything about how they made it? Because there was, like, a lot of chanting in, like, a sort of, like, non-English language that I thought was pretty effective, and in general, I thought that the soundtrack, the way it was employed, made it much the most scary part of the film.
They paid Baphomet, correct?
They got the big B on this one?
Yeah, the big B. The notorious B.
All right.
So it actually is, it was largely improvised.
Okay.
So this is the craziest shit ever. So the director vetoed any electronic instruments and didn't want any traditional harmony or melody. So the score writer chose a bunch of random instruments, and he knew the director wanted control, so he just kind of would play music to the director, and the director would literally ask to like move notes around.
I want to reiterate my point I made earlier.
I mean,
it worked. I guess
it worked. It worked. And like, that's the thing. For me, it's so much of this is about like, does it work or does it not work? I tend to be very results oriented. And for me, this film, beginning, middle, and end, works to some level or another. So this soundtrack, probably a pain in the ass. This score writer, you deserve a raise. But also, you did arguably the best work of anyone I've seen.
And I think, like, it is important to note, he did make a dude play music. He didn't, like, stick him in a freezer, as in our last movie review.
That's true. There's degrees of how shitty your director is.
Yeah. So
Yes.
this guy, again, and this is why my feelings for him are not, like, super intense. It's more like, alright, come on. Like that would be
it's
my
a little
feeling.
much, dude.
Yeah, it's a little much, but it's not, like, despicable. But one thing this movie I think does really well is the discourse it has around religious certainty, which is, I think, impressive just in general. And I enjoyed that like discussion that it tried to have.
I mean, arguably, this film is the horror film that most fits in with our podcast's stated goal.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, this, thank you for keeping extremely on theme for this one.
So I'm going to go through the plot. You guys feel free to interject as you go. I've written copious notes about this one.
Michael, you
Let's hear
always
it.
write copious.
Yeah, that's true.
That's not true. For Cats, I wrote, I think, 5 sentences.
Yeah, but that was my baby.
Speaking of babies.
Excellent segue, my man.
Speaking of babies. All right, so we open with this film with the trial of our protagonist family. And so they've been banished from their colony over religion. And the dad is like, fuck you, I am right, you're wrong, and has like this religious certainty, which then has caused his family to be exiled from their town, and they have to camp in the forest overnight. And it is really, like, it's already dark for this family, and you can tell that, like, you know, it is going to have some thematic man versus nature. And we definitely get that. So they find a open field in the middle of a forest, which, all right, if one of you found an open field in the middle of a forest, would you just be like, great, new place for a house? Or would you be like, I wonder why trees aren't growing here?
That's a good point. I did not think about that. That's so good. Like, I didn't even, this movie has layers, and it all ties together and makes sense, which is why I love it, like, a whole lot. Like, just bringing up that point, like, of course their crops didn't fucking grow. It wasn't necessary. I mean, the witches probably didn't help, but, like...
Oh, I have so much to tell you about the crops, but we're gonna get there.
We're
gonna
what was
get
that
there.
noise, Aaron?
It was me getting excited about corn.
He's getting corny.
I'm from Indiana and Illinois, man. What do you want?
I do want to point out that the religious persecution it demonstrated in this movie is incredibly historically accurate. When anyone ever tries to tell you that this country was founded on religious freedom, it most certainly was not. The Plymouth fucking colony was one of the most religiously intolerant groups that existed, and they left to the New World because they were like, man, no one's letting us be intolerant to others.
We're being oppressed, so
Yeah.
we have to bring our ideology all the way across the world to oppress other people. And they did a great job of it.
Yeah, they did do a great
mean-
job of pressing, which is America's new slogan.
I mean, you're not wrong. And I do think this film delves into that and doesn't try to whitewash history in that way. So they the family prays over the open field, which, like, is very much like a religious family thing. Like, let's all hold hands and pray over this field that we're going to build our house on, so that way it's blessed by God.
Michael, did this give you prayer cloth vibes?
Yes.
Aaron, do
Yes.
Catholics have that?
Can you give me more detail on what that is?
Yeah, so a prayer cloth is something that would be passed around a church or a group, and everyone would pray upon it for, like, a specific thing. A lot of times people would say, like, pregnancy or whatnot, and then that was given to the individual with, like, the power of prayer bestowed upon it.
Sometimes it would be anointed by, like, oil, not holy oil, because we're not Catholic.
Just vegetable oil, really.
Yeah. You know, I will say, like, that brings up, this podcast is very evenly suited, and you all on Twitter figured this out. We've got one Catholic, one Protestant, and a witch, so...
Yeah. Thank you to everyone on Twitter who is like, what kind of question is this? Of course, Michael is dancing with the Fae.
I've got a demon in me. Michael is a witch. A bitch. And Aaron is corny.
Yeah.
But yeah, do y'all got that?
Yeah, we didn't have, like, definitely not during, like, any sort of, like, formalized ceremony, like, not during the mass or anything, but I feel like that's not an uncommon, you know, deviation. Like, you know, there are some Christian threads that all sort of tie together, especially in the United States. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that was a thing that some Catholics did, but it's not 100% church approved. It's not part of a balanced Catholic breakfast, so to speak.
That's some Christian dessert.
Yeah.
I can't bring up this subject on the podcast without feeling like I'm opening literal Pandora's box with the two of you, but it feels more like American revivalism than it does like actual Christianity.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of that, like, there is a big rift in Catholicism where, like, some people will not hold hands when we say the Our Father at the end of Mass, because, like, of that, like, Baptist influence, and, like, some people will get, like, legit mad over it, and it's very funny.
That's hilarious. So speaking of religion, we get a scene where Thomasin confesses to being sinful and prays for her forgiveness. And she's like listing her sins. And I feel like this is an important moment because Thomasin is shown as very pure and like arguably the best of her family. Like, we're going to get into the twins, but those motherfuckers are little spawns of Satan.
They suck.
Michael, they reminded me of one of our cousins.
I already know which
one.
So we see her then playing peekaboo with her baby brother Samuel, and then he just literally vanishes.
I did laugh at this scene.
I mean, it is actually a really funny play on peekaboo because that's what babies assume are happening.
Fucking idiots don't have objects permanence.
Except instead of you disappearing, the baby disappears.
Yeah. And so, like, this, of course, freaks out the family. And so we see in a split second, too, in this scene, I don't know if the two of you caught this, a woman in a red cloak running away from the scene.
No, I actually didn't catch that.
It is like one of those things. So I actually read about it in a review before I rewatched this time, just because I was doing my homework as I do. And I decided, okay, this scene, I'm just not going to fucking blink. And it truly is a blink and you miss it. And you see the woman in the red hood running. You don't see the baby in her arms, but the next scene is going to show you exactly what happens. So what I like about this film is it doesn't pull punches, and it is a perfect mix of slow burn and action, because you definitely get action. And in the next scene, we see Sam, the baby, captured by a naked woman with a knife. And she is very clearly going to kill the baby. And so she kills him. And we see her like making some sort of mixture, which is a flying ointment, which I have plenty of homework about. And she rubs it all over her and then ends up flying. in the full moon. So let's talk for a brief moment about flying ointment.
I do like that you bring that up as if me and Aaron are gonna go, oh boy, do I have things I need to say about flying ointment.
So it's more because I think this is going to be a trademark. I get Aaron to exclaim, "What the fuck?"
Ah, yes. That classic bit. We always do.
So there's actually a bit of history around this. So history, the jury is out if, like, witches were an actual, like, practicing group, whether they were, you know, real in the sense of, like, was this, like, a religion that people were practicing, that they were hunted down. We know that that sort of persecution exists in church history. What we don't know is whether or not these particular practices were used. But Sir Francis Bacon decided, you know what? Yes. Not only are there witches, not only are there flying ointments, they eat fucking babies. And he is the one that spread, they eat babies. Well, modern historians have taken an interesting look on that. And so they think it can be a couple of things. They do think there was some sort of ointment that was found, because we see it in some of the records of the witch trials. There are a couple of things it could be. The first one being a hallucinogenic, so the flying is more of a metaphorical flying rather than a literal one. And then, of course, the other one that it is, which is viewed as arguably the most likely, is a homemade lubricant. So imagine you're in your house, you're cooking up a lubricant. They also think this is where the witch broom situation came from.
Oh,
the witches
no.
were flying on a broomstick. Yeah.
Oh, no.
So just imagine
history so goddamn much.
you're in the Middle Ages. You're like, you know what? I'm horny. I'm going to cook up some homemade lube. And then you end up getting burnt at the fucking stake for it.
That would be the, like, 5th worst thing that's ever happened to me because I was horny.
I think that would still be my number one, gotta be honest. So yeah, that is a real thing in history, and there's a lot of debate about it. There's even debate of whether or not it is, there were opiates in it, which is what made, you know, people think they could fly. But if you notice, in the original portrayals of witches flying on brooms, the broomstick is backwards. So that tends to be a pretty, like, 1-for-1 for the argument that it was just a homemade lubricant, and that, you know, there wasn't exactly sex shops you could walk into in the Middle Ages.
What if it was both? This lube gets you high!
Coming soon, Dispenser's Gifts.
Hell yeah, it's gonna make you come soon.
This is a bad show.
So, I don't know how we get back to infanticide after that, but we are going to surely try. So Thomason feels terribly guilty over something that is verifiably not her fault. Her family has kind of decided that the baby was taken away by a wolf, even though we have seen no real sign of much wildlife other than, like, you know, small animals. We've yet to see any wolves or any pack sort of animals, but it was easier for them to say it's a wolf, not a witch. So we're going to say it's a wolf.
I do love, like, the movie logic, but, like, I've done that before, too, where you just pick an explanation that makes absolutely no goddamn sense because you just want to move on. But, like,
well, here's the thing. I think it's the exact opposite, right? Like, what's more likely, that a super fast wolf ate your kid or a witch stole him?
I'm gonna be
right.
But, like, imagine, like a cartoon wolf tiptoeing up and, like, looking at the camera. Shh.
I mean, here's the thing. The truth is that this is unexplainable, right? Like, if this happened in real life, we would just be like, I have no fucking clue.
Maybe the baby was right. Object permanence is stupid.
So, you know, like, I can imagine that led to a lot of confusion at that time. And one thing that the director said over and over again in interviews that I read and reviews that I read is he wanted things that happen in this film to kind of cascade from ways that you could like logic yourself out of things given knowledge in 1620. So in 1620, your baby goes missing. You're like, fuck, guess it was a wild animal.
That hits on one of the things that I like about this movie is that like we'll see like firstly it was very important that we see that the witches do exist and they are real. Because that's what leads to like this delicious dramatic irony that sort of follows through this whole movie because we'll see this Thomason's doubting herself and blaming herself like all comes to a head like as the film progresses, and I love just the way that this story moves forward and we see like how this continues to build and all this family drama like sorts to start to break her down.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a great segue because her mom has lost her fucking mind. And so Thomason's mom is just sobbing and praying and just freaking out over the loss of her baby. And like, obviously so. But it is to pretty extreme levels. And then Thomason's brother Caleb, who is arguably the only other character in this who is even remotely redeemable, if you ask me.
He is the Ham of this movie, in my opinion. So I don't know that I'm going to give Caleb a pass here.
That's fair.
Okay. I don't know if this is mean to say, but he reminded me of my own brother.
Hey! What does that mean?
Because you're nice and you want to be there for everyone.
And also he looks at your boobs.
Okay, that part is just fucking gross and I cannot excuse anything about it.
Yeah, Michael's like, ugh, boobs.
No, like it is something that's I found really fascinating, that scene, and we'll get to the proper scene, but like it is a reoccurring theme in this. He is a, prepubescent or like on the cusp of puberty in the woods with no one other than his mom and Thomason, right? Like Thomason's the only girl that's even remotely his age. So I do think like there's some fucked psychology going on that he is probably aware of, but is like, oh my God, like I'm also living in the middle of nowhere with no food.
There's a lot fucked up about it. I'm a little upset that like you saw that and went, it's my brother.
No, where I saw it, I'll defend it a little bit. Where I saw it is when he was like defending her and like saying like it's not her fault and like comforting her rather than the mom and then like sneaking out around the mom.
Okay.
Like that idea of like keeping harmony. I saw that for where we are in the film and then quickly changed my mind.
Okay, cool.
That's my defense of that observation.
I can accept that a little bit more.
So Caleb sneaks out of the house to see his dad who's in the field. And we notice that the crops are just not growing. So I'm going to take a moment and talk about the crops.
Aaron, play the crop time music that you've queued up.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So I had to look this up and figure out like what the fuck was rotting, like these sheaths of wheat and corn and all of this. So it was ergot fungus, which is, yeah. Yeah. So it is a pretty serious fungus, and it ended up causing some epidemics. It's also called St. Anthony's fire. It can cause convulsions, gangrene, spasms. It can even cause hallucinations, and is arguably the cause of the quote-unquote dancing plague.
I'm a bit upset that Michael does more research for each one of these podcasts than I've done so far for my capstone history class.
So what I found interesting about this, though, is that it is a pretty common theory that the Salem witch trials came from this exact rot of the crop, and that more often than not, the women in the households were preparing the food, so they would be the ones touching. So even though the whole family were consuming it and around it, theorists and like believers of this theory say, look, like when you cook it, you're diluting it, and then when you digest it, you're diluting it, and you might get ulcers and you might get like an upset stomach, but you're probably not going to have like convulsions and visions and, you know, vomiting everywhere. So I find that to be a very interesting like background, like setting, which this director does so well. So yeah, we just after, like Aaron said, we get proof of there being an actual witch. We also get proof that there's a hallucinogenic fungus right there. So I think like proponents of whatever argument, right, of I think the film wants you to the whole time question like, wait, how much of this is the witch and supernatural, and how much of this is like a family who's hungry in the middle of fucking nowhere, and now they have like, you know, rotting food that is giving off this fungus that causes them to hallucinate. The film does answer that question, which I tend to like a little bit more than if they left it completely up in the air. But I do like that they dangle this to you every single time they give you a supernatural. They like balance it until the film's climax, that is. So William, which is the dad, decides to take Caleb hunting in the woods because they're not so great at growing food. And William is quizzing Caleb on how sinful he is.
Yeah, this is your first indication that he's the actual antagonist of the show.
Yeah. He sucks.
William is the villain. I stand by, like, Caleb, had he been in a better household, would have been like a sweet angelic boy and there would be nothing wrong with him. But I think it's because of his fucked up parents that he is, you know, an incestuous little horny boy.
Oh, the incestuous little horny boy.
Our favorite archetype.
Yeah. On the hero's journey.
Well, we'll see.
He's on a journey.
He is on a journey. So Caleb is having doubts on whether or not his brother is in heaven or if he will go to heaven if he dies. And I feel like this really strikes at, you know, Christianity's love affair with guilt and with that emotion. And we really see, like, you know, the plants are rotting from this fungus, but this family is rotting because of religious guilt and, like, lack of self-awareness.
Aaron, as our podcast Catholic expert on guilt, what are your thoughts on this? Because Catholicism do guilt better.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say. Like, everything in this film regarding guilt seemed normal and like what every family goes through. So I don't know why we're bringing it up. It seemed pretty typical. I mean, we're all sinful and we love to writhe in our own filth and decay and beg the Lord for forgiveness because that's just what the human condition is, right, everyone?
We all live deliciously.
I certainly do. So, you know, William then admits, and this right here to me cements that he is truly a villain and is, you know, beyond any sort of repentance here. So he tells his son that he traded away Catherine, his wife's silver cup, which is like her only real possession, for hunting supplies so they can go out and hunt rabbits and not do it well.
He's a bad hunter.
Yes.
So fucking bad at hunting.
Like, I've gone hunting before. I didn't shoot much, but oh my god.
But imagine being this bad at basic survival and also having gone across the Atlantic to, like, a place to survive.
But that is so on brand, Michael.
Yeah.
It's so on brand for that time period and for now.
100%. I mean, it's just so funny to me because he's so laughably bad about it. But then we get a really fun, like, I don't know if it's fun. We get a really interesting scene where Thomasin is collecting eggs and she sees a cracked egg with like a half-formed chick in it. And in my notes I put, that's what we call foreshadowing, baby, because it's very, very clear that there are going to be thematic elements woven in. And then we get to meet the true best character, the true character that reminds me of my brother, actually. Fowler, their pet dog.
Oh.
Mike, are we good?
I'm comparing you to a dog. That is like the best comparison.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, except the
I'd
dog's
be like
fate
that.
is sort of kind of what Josh is worried about.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not wishing any ill on you. I didn't wish ill on Fowler. That's the only part of this film that made me upset.
We've just established that you're the podcast witch, so...
True, but I'm like a cool witch. So Fowler sees a rabbit. William tries to shoot it and then hits himself in the fucking face, which I laughed out loud at.
So fucking stupid.
Dork.
It's like, this
Dork.
dingus.
I'm like, how can you be evil and dumb? Like,
You get one or
Well,
the
Michael,
other.
you look at anyone in our current government.
Yeah.
he does fit right in.
He would have a cabinet position.
Yes, 100%. And then we meet the film's other villains, the chaotic evil twins, Jonas and Mercy.
Oh my god.
Okay, these kids reminded me so much of when I would go to, like, visit the kindergarten classes as a school nurse, and it's just, like, barely contained anarchy. Just, like, the kids are running around and screaming, and just, like, there's a really good part with them later on, but, I loved these kids, and I also hated them so much.
I loved them from afar, but I was like, if these were actual kids that I knew, I would never invite their parents over to anything.
I love kids so much, but oh my god, this was like almost I was watching it and I'm like, oh, I'm having like flashbacks from kids I haven't had to deal with since church camp. Oh my god.
But the best part is that, like, even then, right, like, the insufferable children, even those characters are well written enough that we all could think of, like, 5 kids off the top of our head that behaved that way. And I think that is just really good writing.
The characterization is excellent throughout. I love this. It's so good.
And so these kids are chanting a song about Black Phillip the goat, which I also put more symbolism, baby, because they're literally chanting about a black goat that they have let free to run amok. So we also get to see that, like, Catherine really doesn't like Thomason because she yells at her about these kids. And it's like, okay, if the kids are old enough to let Black Phillip out of his pen and chant a song about him, it is really on them. And it is on you as a parent to not let them do that. And what are you doing? Inside crying and praying? Your daughter's out working.
Yeah, this is where we get the classic, like, daughter-mom conflict that really comes into play in this movie, and it's really well done, and I don't have much to say except that I just love everything. Like, every way that this show sets up the character beats and moments is intentional, and it works, and it's good.
Yes, and speaking of that, we get more of that in this next scene, where Caleb and William get home for nothing. She's infuriated that they were out in the woods. And so Caleb lies and says to his mom that they were out finding apples. And then I noted in parentheses with that note, William doesn't like that. And you can see this, like, look, he can tell, like, his kid's lying to cover up for him, and he, like, really doesn't like that.
We should get better at shooting. Oh my god.
And so Thomason is sent to the creek to wash clothes, and then Caleb is sent there to get water. And this is where I turned on Caleb, because he's checking out his sister's boobs. Like, that's just a bit much for me. I was very team Caleb on first watch until this scene, and then again on second watch, I was like, why do I hate this kid? I forgot about this little subplot. And I was like, why do I hate this kid? I really like him. He's so sweet. And then this happened, and I'm like, okay. So, you know, that's pretty creepy. And then, so Mercy sneaks up on them and is, like, sneaking around saying that she's the witch in the forest, which, okay, this is a pure sociopath. Imagine a child's sibling, baby brother, was abducted, and then that child pretended to be the abductor.
I didn't really put into thought how absolutely fucked that is. Oh my god.
It's some serial killer shit. And then Mercy follows it up with, like, why are you over here? Oh, yeah, that's right, because mother hates ye. It's just so good. And, like, this is, like, some extremely good sibling shit, as I'm sure you two can attest to, because it's, like, that's when Thomasin snaps, and she's like, oh, all right, little sister, you want to play? Let's fucking play. And, like, I've absolutely done, like, when I was younger, I've absolutely, like, snapped on my little sister and be like, all right, let's go. I'm done.
That was a perfect encapsulation of older-younger sibling dynamics, because, like, the younger siblings egging it on, and at first you're like, oh, no, I'm responsible. I've got to be, you know, the adult here. And then they say one thing that takes it too far, and it's like, let's fucking go.
I do love the false idea that is being put forth that, listen, the younger sibling starts shit 98% of the time, but you guys do 2%. Don't you leave out that 2%.
It's the 98% that justifies the 2%.
Yeah. It's in retaliation. I do think we get a funny and also, like, creepy line from Mercy where, you know, Thomasin is asking what she's doing out there, and Mercy says, well, Black Phillip says I can do what I like. And it's so good. And so then Thomasin, like, freaks the fuck out and loses her shit on her sister and says that she's the witch of the forest and she'll eat her if she says anything, and, like, you know, is just, like, really scaring Mercy. And Caleb's like, dude, what the fuck? Get off of her. You're, like, going too far. So I put this isn't going to end well, and sure enough, I am right. So we get the family back at dinner. Catherine accuses Thomasin of stealing her silver cup, and we, the audience, know that William took it. And, I was filled with such righteous fury for Thomasin, because I'm not a very patient person, and I would have flipped that fucking table and been like, I don't know who took this, but it wasn't me. Like, just imagine having everyone, like, turn on you that way. And she is saved by the bleating of goats. We just hear them going fucking wild in the background. Catherine is admonishing Thomasin for not putting them away, even though she had sent her away from taking care of the goats to go wash the clothes. It's very much a theme in this is Thomasin will not make Catherine happy.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is, no one's going to make Catherine happy. And we do, like, learn that as the story unravels a bit. So
real quick, though, I want to also interject a couple things.
Yeah.
One, William, like, opens this like with prayer, and he's talking about, like, okay, everybody's getting out of hand, their emotions are out of control, we'll have a fast day tomorrow, and we'll pray to the Lord for our sins, and hey, Caleb, how about you read from the Bible today? And I was like, I just want to tell this man, I just want to be like, hey, dude, Jesus was not white. And there's also one thing that I feel like we should bring up, which is that, like, whenever William gets mad, or, like, whenever some things go bad for him, he goes out and, like, chops wood. And, like, that's his thing. He can't fucking plant, he can't hunt, but he's very good at chopping wood. And there's this axe, and we keep seeing this axe, like, going up and down and up and down. And, like, I really liked where the axe, like, Chekhov's axe went.
yeah, and I also liked the idea of, like, this is someone who doesn't really process any feeling ever. And so instead they just, like, go out and rage out with an axe chopping wood. And this film in a lot of ways feels like a condemnation of toxic masculinity and misogyny in a really beautiful way. And I think William's character could almost be a stand-in for, like, toxic religious masculinity.
Oh, yeah. And according to our past podcast, he definitely wants to get cucked.
Almost certainly.
Oh, yeah.
There's a 53% chance.
Yep. It is pretty fucking likely. So Thomasin checks out the goats because they're freaking out. And we get a moment between Catherine and William, and Catherine thinks the family is absolutely cursed, William says God has provided for us, and like, you know, hey, it's an angry God. Like, he really is like the proponent of like the angry God theory, that like, you know, God's just really pissed at us for existing, which, okay, I'm gonna take us on a tangent. I've never understood that. Why make me if you're gonna get mad at me? Like,
Michael, I tried that argument with our parents.
Yeah.
I do too, and it works.
That's one big thing that like started me down the road to not Catholic anymore, which is that like the argument is that like, oh well, God made humans because it was a supreme act of love, and also we exist in the hierarchy of a religion in which God also allows you to be punished for all eternity because you did this to yourself, which does
Well,
not
and
track.
the default is punishment. That's the part that I hate. The default is punishment. If you come into this earth blank slate, like, the whole point of this like angry God theory is you're born into sin, so you will die and go to hell, which is what they think is happened to Samuel because he wasn't baptized. And it's like, okay, this is really fucked then, because you haven't even done anything wrong yet.
Well, you got the. Well, this is our Protestant upbringing, Michael, of not understanding the like is a baby. Like, what the fuck? Like, is a baby. It didn't even do it. It doesn't know that bad exists yet. Just let it vibe.
Yeah, does Protestantism have the concept of like age of reason?
Yeah, but it's like really like, it's a very slippery concept. You just can't grasp it too tightly, you know?
Don't look at it for too long.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Catholicism is a little bit better. It's like there's no like 100% age, but it's like around 7 or 8. Like we give you leeway until second grade.
We're like, there is an age, but I'm not going to tell you what it is.
Yeah, and it
like,
varies
cool.
from person to person.
Yeah, that's no
It's,
good.
I'm going to go on a rant here. It's just like American evangelicalism is so tied with like toxic patriotism and like almost like a jingo nationalistic vibe. And it is so about like deifying the individual. And so of fucking course the church says every individual has their own age, because we're obsessed with this culture of I am different than everyone else and my experience is 1,000% different. Don't you know that? And it's like, yeah, sure, to a point, but there is also science of like when your brain develops and when you can actually like make informed decisions and like take into account consequences.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Babies should pull themselves up by their little booty straps.
Yeah, but
Their baby bootstraps.
But here's the thing, Aaron. Science proved that, like, when the brain's done developing, second grade, the Catholics
Yes,
got it right.
obviously. That's why we give you the Eucharist then. It gives you a little fucking brain booster. It's like the Limitless pill. But for Jesus.
It's the Limitless pill.
A fucking Pediasure with Catholicism.
So funny.
It's a dumb podcast.
It really is.
So, the kids are all listening to their parents argue, which I found to be another, like, really human moment. It was so funny. So Catherine wants to send Thomasin away to serve another family because she thinks she's bad. And they actually talk about this in a really interesting way that I want to bring up. They bring up that Catherine talks about how, like, she's reaching age of womanhood and it's time for her to go and serve another house. And, like, if you think about how they talk about, like, a woman coming of age, it's in a really timely way. Like, that's exactly how the puritanical culture would talk about it. It's also such a thoroughly misogynistic thing that, like, we see ripples of that to this day. And, you know, it's this idea that, like, Caleb is, you know, he does bad things and, like, he has bad impulses, but he's just a kid. And, like, Thomasin is mostly good and has bad outbursts, but she's grown. And it's like, we tend to, as a society, treat young girls as closer to adulthood before their brains are even remotely formed, whereas young boys were like, well, that's just boys being boys. And I think this film does a really good job of, like, striking that chord. without even belaboring it. Like, it was a very casual, like, one-off conversation that the kids were listening to, but I think an interesting one. So Thomason wakes up early the next morning and finds Caleb preparing to leave. So he's going to go check the traps that he and his father set. And Thomason's like, are you fucking crazy? Like, you're going to go into the woods by yourself. You're like 12 years old. And this kid's like, yeah, I can do it. And so she insists to go with him and bring the horse and their dog Fowler. So they're out in the woods, they're walking and talking. And like, I will say most of their relationship is like cute and normal. And then like Caleb just has to interject these like lecherous moments, which, I mean, to be fair, 12-year-old kids are gross. But
not to fucking defend Caleb, because I still don't love this dude, but like I took note of every time he was being fucking creepy, and I think it was only like once or twice.
Yeah.
So like this scene where they're walking through the woods, I really enjoyed it because it's like that's sibling shit where it's just like, oh shit, you remember when fucking dad was like, oh, I'm gonna eat that dog, yo, let's eat our dog, and then everybody thought that was a super funny joke because humor wasn't invented until 1929, but like, like that's another just great character moment. It's like they are actually like good friends, like you would be if you were, you know. Like, I mean, we both only have the other sibling, but, like, I can understand, like, if you were in a house with multiple siblings with, like, that big of an age gap, you're gonna like the sibling that's closest to your age more because, like, you just relate to them more.
Yeah, you're gonna have a favorite sibling.
Yeah, me and Michael both have a favorite sibling.
Yeah. Both of our favorite sibling is me.
God, we gotta get another sibling.
Yeah, so then they can like me most too.
Let's get our parents on top of it.
Nope.
So Fowler, their dog, loses his shit over a rabbit and just goes running. Caleb chases him. The horse gets spooked, throws Thomason off. She gets knocked out. And it's like a very chaotic scene, and it happens very quickly. And like, I don't know, you feel like frenetic watching this, or at least I did. I felt very frenetic and like panicked for them. Even on this most recent watch, which I know what happens. Like, none of this was a big surprise to me. And the power of the filmmaking with this is I still felt it. So Caleb is alone in the woods, scared, and like praying for his salvation, which, like, can we all take a moment and pour one out for our adolescence spent in the church in this exact same thing? Like, I feel like if you're listening to this podcast, either you understand that all three of us did that as, you know, young adults, or you yourself did. Yeah, I mean, you can totally keep this part in the podcast because I am an oversharer and I think I'm physically incapable of feeling shame.
That's a superpower. Don't be afraid of that.
It is a superpower. It does give me pause. So, like, I spent my entire, I would say from maybe, like, 10, 11 to around 15 praying that I wouldn't be attracted to boys. Like, every night, like, it was part of, I had, like, a prayer that I would add to. By the end of it, it was, like, too fucking long. But it was part of it. And, like, I saw this scene and I'm like, oh, this kid has definitely said this prayer before.
Oh, God.
It is really...
I could just imagine young Michael's prayer, just like, God, please don't let me notice their long lashes, and please don't let me appreciate their gorgeous smile, and please don't, their arms, please don't let me look at their arms, or the way that their back must, oh, God, please don't let me appreciate that.
Can we get a segment of Aaron tries to figure out
what gay people like? Yeah.
This
is what queer people are like, right?
You know how many times
this is how you know sexuality is not a choice, is because no matter how hard I try to relate to queer people, I have no idea what the queer experience is like.
Hello, fellow queers.
Oh, it's really fun. Oh, he's a little confused, but he's got the spirit.
Trying my best. This is allyship.
I love it. So, all right, then the worst thing happens in this film, and I have to get somber for a minute. We hear Fowler yelp, and Caleb runs that way, and we see Fowler's like mutilated corpse for only a second, and I appreciate that they only give us a blink and then you'll miss it, because I think prolonging on this film like actually multiple times could have veered into like this misery porn / like gore porn area where it's like just hard to watch, and because of directing decisions they never got there. And I think that's why maybe this director was so, involved in every single moment of it, because I think that he understood this was a very delicate balance you were striking. And if you made that scene just a second longer, I think it really would have put me off and probably put me in a bad mood for the rest of the movie. Where instead I realized, like, oh shit, like, something's gonna go down.
One movie gets to kill a dog. It's John Wick. No other movie is allowed.
Oh, I skipped past that scene when I watched John Wick because I didn't want to watch the dog die.
You're fair and valid and same.
You can't open that up without me talking about fridging, so I'm just gonna move on.
Here we go.
Because I will go on an hour-long rant about fridging.
I can't believe we haven't had a fridging conversation yet. Maybe it's just because you choose good movies, but...
It's because I purposefully... There are two tropes I try my damnedest to avoid, and they are barrier gaze and fridging. If I can avoid those two tropes and never watch anything with them, never consume anything with them, I will be happy for the rest of my days.
I'm trying to think of any movie that fridged that we've seen, and like I would love if God's Not Dead fridged. That would have been really good.
God's Not Dead did fridge. Do you remember in God's Not Dead 3, the black guy?
Oh
yeah. They literally did.
Pastor Judah got fridged.
Yeah. They also buried their gays. I won't say which scene, but it's in there if you look close.
So we are supposed to somehow move on from the dead dog, and William finds Thomason, but not Caleb and not the horse. And
real quick, before you get into that, I do want to point out one of my favorite scenes. When they are going to go look for the kids, they do have the twins tied up like on fucking little leashes, because they're like, I can't deal with these fucking idiot children. I'm gonna tie them up while we go look for our actual good children.
This is actually when kid leashes were invented in this moment.
Can you imagine having 5 kids and those are the 2 you're stuck with?
Oh my god. That's like the fact that the only Beatle is Ringo.
I mean, it's fucking bleak.
And don't give me any of that Paul is still alive. I'll send you guys some articles that will wake these people up.
We do not have time for conspiracy theories. So Caleb is still wondering, and at this point, even in my first watch, I'm like, okay, so like he's on borrowed time. There's no way. So he stumbles on a tiny little shack, and then we see a woman in a red cape walk out. And she is like this very young, very vibrant. I said she's giving me like sexy Little Red Riding Hood vibes. Like it's very much, all of that.
Like her breasts are coming out of like her top, and I was like, ah, yes, that's why he was so obsessed with boobs. We had to have that.
Check off boob.
He's a yeah. That's what I have in my notes, literally. So
yeah, I mean, it literally is, right? Like we've shown him to be like this, like sexually repressed, like horny teenager, basically, and then you see someone who's like scantily clad, like just sulking out, and it's really good.
Wait a second, boys, is this our first boob?
I mean,
because Aaron was very upset there wasn't one in the Velocipaster.
Yes.
And I'm trying to think. I think this is our first boob.
I mean, we didn't get full like nipple, if that's what you're talking about, but
we do later.
Oh, I guess we do at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, fair. That's fair.
So, guys, this is our first ever boob. I don't know about you guys, but this is my first boob.
This is I think this might be the first like full nudity in any film that we've recorded
And that I've ever seen.
Okay, so I put that Caleb walks towards this woman because Caleb has smooth brain energy around hot girls.
Listen, we've all made dumber, horny decisions. Right?
I don't know that I've ever walked up to a stranger in the woods that my baby brother was kidnapped in because I was horny. I can't say that's a decision I made.
Help me out here, Aaron. Right?
I've made some bad horny decisions, but they did result in me getting married.
So they were good decisions.
So they were pretty
every
good.
morning you
actually.
wake up and go, "You are the best bad horny decision I've ever made."
No, I don't say that.
No,
for a lot
I know
of
your
reasons.
wife.
that
That
is an
cannot be
only
said.
you thing. That is an only you thing. You're the only person that would say that.
Oh yeah. I'm a menace.
So the witch kisses Caleb, and we see her hand like transform into that of like an old, like decrepit hand. And so we like very quickly put together, this is the witch. This is the same like old lady that we've seen.
The tit chiller witch.
Sure. So William is insisting on finding Caleb, and he's like, fuck it, I'm leaving in the middle of the night. He and Catherine get into an argument in which he finally admits to taking her cup. And I was like, Thomason has so much more grace than I do, because I would have been like, are you fucking kidding me? You knew Mom was batshit, and you didn't tell her that it was all you and let her just terrorize me? What an asshole. And William remains.
Yeah, we got some extreme bad parents up in here.
Yes. And so once again, Thomason goes out to put the goats down. She finds Caleb naked in the rain outside, and we see that he's very sick. He gets put up in a room, and I actually feel like this stretch of the film is when it goes from more like thriller, historical, psychological to like full-blown, this is a horror movie. Act 2 of this film is a horror film. And I love it. Again, it could have gone in such a different direction and could have just not been a scary film had the second act not taken place. It could have gone down the path of, say, like The Village, for those of you who have seen that.
Oh, that would have been such an amazing if they had the same twist.
No, but like it could have been a bad twist like that made us all roll our eyes and go, really, what a fucking waste of time.
Yeah, it really could have.
So their solution to their sick child that probably has hypothermia from wandering around in New England naked in the rain is, let's cut him and bleed him a little bit.
Well, to their defense, that was the cure-all. That was their Advil.
If it's good enough for George Washington, it's good enough for Caleb.
Exactly.
You know what? I will actually accept that.
So Mercy then, the child that she is, says that Black Phillip told her that Thomason is a witch and is evil. And if a little kid came up to me and said, hey, this goat told me that you're a witch and you're evil, I'd be like, who's the one talking to fucking goats?
Hey, Michael, that's a really underhanded, because we had that exact discussion 10 years ago, and I can't believe you're bringing it back up now. I thought we moved past it as siblings.
We moved past it. So right after this, an auspicious sign, Thomason tries to milk the goat and blood comes out. And so this is actually a really common thing in like witchcraft lore. And so I actually read an interview from Slate where the director was talking to them about it. And so there are scenes of in like witch lore of people sucking blood from goat udders and animals lactating blood. And he was saying, yeah, witches very often steal milk from farm animals, dry up the animals' milk, turn their milk to blood, curdle their milk, and drink it. Sometimes they would take the forms of other animals to do that. Witches had familiars in demonic shapes and were often in the forms of everyday animals. The black cat that we associate with witches is a familiar. The witch, being an anti-mother, would feed these animals with her blood that came out of her nipples. And the note is, this explains a certain scene with the raven that comes later. We'll talk about that.
Real quick, on the subject of animals, the only thing that I didn't really understand the significance of was this rabbit that seems to be showing up in some intense scenes. Do you know if that, like, has any sort of significance?
So nothing I found pointed to anything particular with the rabbit. My assumption has to be, like, the rabbit representing, like, purity and nature, given that, like, it is shown in opposition to this family who is, like, trespassing on this ground. That's the only thing, like, that's me personally. If someone has already written that, I am sorry I stole your idea, but that is the idea I had when watching The Rabbit.
Listen, I'd give you an A on that English paper.
So I think that was just a wonderful scene because Thomasin is obviously like, holy shit, what just happened? And so William has decided they're going back to town. He's taking Caleb to a doctor rather than just bleeding him out. And he's going to come back for Catherine Thomasin and the twins. I don't feel like anyone in that situation is happy except for the twins. The twins are like, yay, no dad, we get to wreak havoc. Thomasin is like, you're leaving me with this crazy person. And the mom is like, you're leaving me with my least favorite children.
You're taking the one I like.
Yeah, the last one that I like. I liked the baby and I liked this one, and that's it. And in a really, like, fucked but also, like, amazing, powerful scene, Catherine compares herself to Job's wife, talks about, like, their relationship. And I just think, like, it's a powerful scene because she talks about, like, missing England and how, like, she wants to go home. And to her, home is England. She doesn't want to go back into this puritanical society. She wants to go on the boat and just turn back around. And it's really interesting because the only characters we hear talk about England are Thomasin and Catherine, which I thought about because earlier Catherine mentions about having, like, glass windows in their home in England and talking about how, like, nice everything was. And I do find it interesting that these are the two that have, like, the fondest memories of England.
I do think that, like, there's probably a metaphoric, like, linking them and, like, a bit of separation from the, like, insanity of the twins. Like, there's definitely, like, a through line that could be made. I'm not, like, smart enough to make it.
Yeah, I'm trying to thread that needle too. I think maybe you could interpret it as, like, they are old enough to remember that, like, when it was better, and that's why they kind of understand and are, like, sort of in opposition to their parents in some cases because they know that, like, their parents sort of took them from a life of relative ease and put them here, and it was wholly unnecessary.
Yeah, I mean, I find it interesting that it's like the like grown women having this, like, fondness and almost clarity of circumstance. I kind of read it as that, like, it is a clarity of circumstance. I think Catherine is fully aware that their chances of survival out here in the wilderness, even if they're with the other, you know, Puritans, is pretty fucking low. Like, it's a grim prospect. And William's pride, obviously, is what gets him in the way of, like, recognizing that. Whereas I think Thomasin has, like, a fondness for how simple things were, like the purity of childhood. I'm sure there's a lot of there. But I just found it kind of interesting, and I noted it. So Mercy, once again, is singing a song outside to Black Phillip. And the moment she stops singing, we hear a scream. And it is perfect. It's chilling because you hear this creepy kid chanting this song about Black Phillip, which is already a creepy name for a creepy creature that would much later come to represent like Satanism and, demology, even though at the time it probably didn't.
Hey, I will not have goats slandered here. They are a cute animal, and I'm upset our parents never let me get one. Goats are great.
I love them. I think they're great.
Like and comment if you're a goat.
They do have those square eyes, which makes them terrifying, but as long as you ignore that...
They also eat anything. Like...
Also terrifying.
Coward.
So the family walks in to what looks like an exorcism. And I love that we're watching this directly after The Exorcist, because it has all the hallmarks, the sweating, it has the screaming, he's got like scratches all over his body.
The questionable medical practices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, at least in this film it was fiction.
Both period accurate.
Yeah. So he's talking about a woman pinching and scratching and torturing him. He's bleeding from his mouth and can't talk. And in one of the best scenes in this film, his father, William, cuts open his mouth and a whole fucking apple with one bite out of it goes rolling on the ground.
It's so good. I just loved that shit. I was just like, oh my god.
There are so
Yes.
many layers to it. Like, I don't think we have to talk about the fact that, like, it harkens back to, like, creation. And then, like Adam and Eve in the garden. And then you also have this family in the wilderness. You have him lying earlier about seeing apples, where Thomason saying, I haven't seen an apple since England. Like, it's just, there are so many layers to this scene.
The way that, like, this was all set up and foreshadowed, and when it finally happened, I was like, okay, I'm 100% on board with this movie. Whatever happens from here, I'm down. That owns.
The director said that this scene alone was 11 pages long. And I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe it.
I mean, there's a lot going on, right? There's the exorcism setup where everyone starts to, like, pray and, like, starts chanting various prayers. And then there's, like, Thomason who's trying to help, and, like, then, like, all of a sudden the twins are like, we don't remember our prayers, oh no. And then they start falling on the ground. She's like, hey, what the hell are you doing? And, like, her yelling at them starts them, like, convulsing. And then there is one part where they start screaming, she desires of my blood, which had me full on cackling because it's little kids screaming that, which is really funny.
It's like, these two are such sociopaths. Their brother just threw up a fucking bloody apple, and then they're just screaming that Thomason is a witch, led by Mercy, who's saying, like, she told me she was a witch when we went to the creek. Caleb is in no position to defend what happened, so it is now Mercy's word against Thomason. And for some reason, this family goes, Mercy, that's a reliable source.
Do you guys think there's any, like, relation of, like, them not being able to, or, like, forgetting the prayers and, like, the common, like, demons don't let you say the Lord's name and stuff like that?
I mean, like, not to spoil the film's ending, but I do think that, like, that's absolutely, like, kind of what happened, right?
So, okay, I kind of have a bit of a different take. So, and I'm gonna first start with, like, just what the film gives us and not weigh in. And, like, at the end, I'm gonna give you guys, like, some things I've read, some theories I personally have. So, I think this could just as easily be kids being kids. And, like, I think very easily these two could be like, I don't want to pray. I'm scared. I just saw my brother throw up a bloody fucking apple. Like, this is, like, a scary thing. Like, imagine being 5 years old and, like, being yelled at by your parents to, like, say the Lord's Prayer over and over and over again over your convulsing 12-year-old brother that, is yelling about being pinched and scratched and just threw up a bloody apple. There's no way you'd be like, sure. I might have, but, like...
You would have been like, that's improbable.
I'd be like, where'd he get the apple? So I think that, like, what the film sets up is the question of, is this something dark? Or is it, 5-year-olds adapting to, a scary situation? And I don't think there is a clear answer. I have theories and thoughts, but...
Can we talk for a second about the fucking, from the mouth of babes comes the truth, or whatever the fuck. Like, there's some bad stuff in the Bible. I think that's one of its worst takes.
Yeah, I mean, it's when, I don't remember the exact verse, but it's like the truth from the mouth of babes. Like, it's talking about, you know, basically little kids never lie.
Never,
and it's
not
like,
a,
well,
that's all they do. That's all
like,
they
dog.
do. Have you spent any time with
Excuse
little
me,
kids?
Mr. James, have you met a kid?
yeah, have you met a child ever?
My little cousins played a game where they'd ask me to close my eyes and said they wouldn't hit me, and then would hit me. That was a game they did for weeks.
That seems like a bad game.
It was not a fun game.
It was fun for them. So Caleb is then repenting in like this really big, like grandiose scene. So I actually pulled a lot from this article from 2019 from Fast Company. It's called Anatomy of a Scene. It's where they break down this scene and do like a much better job than even I could. And so they were talking about how, you know, how long this took and all of that. And talking about how this scene could have really easily devolved into just people yelling at each other. He said it was 11 pages, the longest. He was afraid of doing this scene. And so let's see. On paper, it looks like a lot of yelling, he said. So it was definitely the most collaborative scene between me and the actors than anything else. And I really loved it because so he was talking about how he comes from a theater background and he was like blocking the scene, and he took some of the prayer that Caleb was given from a reading from John Winthrop, one of the Puritan founders of New England. And it's just so good. It's the, "O Lord, my love, how wholly delectable thou art. Let him kiss me with kisses of his mouth, for his love is sweeter than wine." And basically, like, this article breaks it down and talks about how the director viewed this as some, like, pretty evocative language, and how the line between, like, worship and then, like, eroticizing is very fine. So the scene is set up to make you question, like, is he repenting on his deathbed, or is he fully possessed by a demon that is like making a mockery of, you know, Christ, right? And you even see that with his arms outstretched at the end. Is he, you know, fully in, you know, in lore, in world, like, is he repenting and like seeing God at the end of his life? Or is he possessed by a demon and literally mocking the family? And I don't think there's an answer. The director did not give an answer, did not seem to personally take a side.
I just liked that scene because, like, it was also foreshadowed earlier when, what's her name? Catherine is talking about to her husband about how, like, she had a dream about how she like met Jesus, and like his love was like more tender than the sweetest husbands or whatever, some dumb shit.
Yep.
And like, right, there's a lot of you know, examples in Christianity, like the ecstasy of Saint Teresa is another one, where it's like, yeah, his spear pierced me with holy fire, and like a lot of this like extreme worship shit does also sound like getting extremely horny, and like this, like I just love that you brought that up, Michael, because like it does show like this very narrow line between fanaticism and eroticism, and like the way that he like has this whole on fucking horny spiel right before he dies is just like pretty good.
That is how I want to go. Just being horny for a deity. Probably not God. But like, I don't know, Thor.
Okay, once again, you have proven our listeners right. Because you just hear us say, could be a possession, could be actual religion, and you're like, got it, that's what I want. But that's it, sign me up.
Michael, you've known me for many a year now. That's on brand.
It is on brand, but it's why our listeners are right, and why you are by far most likely to get possessed.
I stand by my decisions.
So William is now convinced that Thomasin is a witch, having seen all of this. And Thomason has responded by listing every single reason that William is an asshole, and I am here for it. She talks about him lying about the cups, she talks about him being too prideful to ever admit he's wrong, and just like really reads him for filth in a scene that is wonderful, because Thomason's been so like long suffering with her family's bullshit that it really, as an audience member, at least for me, it was cathartic to see her just finally go, you know what, fuck this.
I think there is, before that happens though, there is like a really funny dad move where he's like, man, like, cause what's her name? Catherine is like, hey, don't touch my dead son. I think you're a witch. Get the fuck out. And then she goes to like go cry, and then William goes to go comfort her, and he's like, oh man, this tree will be lovely come spring. It's like extremely dad energy, just like, I don't know what to do with my daughter who's fighting with my wife, but anyway, trees.
Yeah.
And I also thought that the way that like this fight starts is like extremely like it's very similar to like those people who are like begging their children not to be queer. Because it's like, please, I know that, you know, you can still repent and Jesus loves you. You know, Satan doesn't, you can, that contract you signed didn't mean anything. And she's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Yeah. I'm your daughter. And then he's just like, no, listen to me. And I just like, I thought this whole movie is a condemnation of religious fanaticism, and the fact that it still rings true to this day. I mean, I guess it wasn't actually set in the 17th century, but still,
yeah,
it wasn't filmed in the 17th century.
They actually found this.
This is found footage.
Found footage. Oh god.
It was underneath the Blair Witch.
Yeah, just like 5 feet deeper was this film. So Thomason then points out, have you been listening to your youngest living children lately? Mercy walks around saying that she's a witch, chanting about a fucking goat that talks to her, and you're in here accusing me? And William being a absentee father, and that is so shocking to me, given that like there are no other people to talk to but his wife and children, and he still has managed to be so absent from his kids' lives. He's like, what? Your sister's doing that? It's so, to me, it's funny, but it's also such a condemnation of William as a character.
He's the deadest beat dad. Like, there's no one else around for 3 miles, and you still can't hang out with your kids. Like, fuck off, man.
They're still
like,
boring.
He was still shocked that she was chanting about this goat. So he brings Thomason in to Catherine to, you know, repeat what she just said. William is yelling at the twins that are like in bed being bled, I'm assuming, and he's asking if they made a covenant with Black Phillip, and they don't answer. So William then reacts in the only way that you do when your children are accusing each other of witchcraft, and one of them says, hey, your daughter is singing and talking about Black Phillip, that goat over there. He locks them in the goat pen.
This is the 17th century equivalent of being like, all right, you guys can't share the PlayStation. No one gets the PlayStation. And also, I'm putting you in the basement all night.
I'm putting you in the shed. Like,
it reminded me of like the most extreme catching you with a cigarette, you're smoking the whole pack. Of like, you like that one goat, now you smoke the whole pack of goats.
Well, yeah, it just also doesn't really track in any form of logic. So obviously there's some weirdness around this goat, right? Like, either Thomason is using it, right, to get into his head. Like, I'm just trying to put myself in William's shoes here, right? You have one kid who is singing and chanting about this goat, saying it's talking to her. And you're like, kids could be kids, right? But even if Thomason is lying to you, she's using that. So, like, wouldn't she then, like, use weird shit that happened? But I'm inflicting way too much logic on William, who is not a man of logic. So William locks them up, and he goes out and chops wood and is praying, confessing about his sins of pride and how he really didn't have to leave the town. It wasn't actually that big of a deal. It wasn't that deep about the religious conviction. He was just mad that they were mad.
So on brand.
It's so on brand, and I would be so angry. I almost wish Catherine would have overheard him, because I feel like she just like would have pushed him off the roof or something.
Oh, yeah.
So then we get a scene showing off how the actor who plays Caleb is such a good actor. Because this next scene is something else.
Well, because like right before this, they bury Caleb, right?
Yes.
Because like he's dead. Whatever happened killed him. So they dig a grave for him after Mercy and the other shitty twin and Thomason are all locked up, and they like dig a hole and they put Caleb in the ground, and then Catherine crawls in the grave with him and like lays there for a bit, and like they don't show her getting out. So there's like a couple minutes I was like, did you bury your wife alive, sir? That's no good. You can't do that, sir. You know that, right?
Wouldn't be completely off-brand.
No.
Yeah, no.
But yeah, that was a really creepy scene, and I'm glad that you brought it up because it ties in really well with this one. So Catherine has a vision, and she sees Caleb holding Samuel, and we get no explanation about that. Caleb is whispering in a demonic voice to Catherine this entire time, and she seems unbothered, and I just can't imagine being unbothered by it, but I guess, like, again, we're not dealing with logic, right? You know these kids are dead. And so we get this great little, like, side-by-side where we'll get a scene with Catherine and then a scene with, like, Thomason and the twins. So I'm just going to, like, follow the film's beats on this as I recap. So then we cut back to the twins, and they're hearing some, like, noises on the roof. And, like, it's, like, creepy. They're locked up. It's the middle of the night. It's pitch black. One thing this film does as a directorial choice is they only use natural light and candlelight for the entire film. They don't use any, like, artificial lighting.
I'm surprised this wasn't recorded on a quill.
I think if it could be, it would be.
Oh, yeah.
So what I love about that are these night scenes. Because I think I've gone on this rant on this podcast before. Night scenes in movies are, like, one of my least favorite things.
You talked about underwater scenes, so I assume this is like its cousin.
Yes. They're very closely related. Because they're just done so poorly. If you put a blue filter on things, I don't believe it's nighttime.
That is fair.
And that's all they usually do. And this, I think watching this film really, like, will ruin night scenes for everyone because they should be dark. It should be hard to see. You should have purposeful illumination. I'm sorry, it's not easy. Like, so then we cut back to Catherine and the kids, and, you know, she's comforting Caleb, and Sam starts crying, and she's like, oh, you're hungry? And for those of you who have watched Game of Thrones, this actress is now being typecast as the woman who breastfeeds strangely. There's no way about it. So she starts breastfeeding this baby, and then we cut back to the twins. And so they see a naked woman drinking from one of the goats that they're locked in with, the same goat that had the blood coming out of it. And it's like she gives, like, the creepiest face, and the twins scream. And it's so perfect because it's a moment of terror and of true horror. And it's not a jump scare, and it really could be one. And if the film was gonna have one, it would be this. But no, they were like, we want to scare you in creative ways. And I really appreciate that. And then we cut back to Catherine. She was not breastfeeding a baby. No. There was a fucking raven pecking at her and just, like, eating the shit out of one of her breasts.
Yeah, my notes for this whole sequence are just, oh beans, oh beans, oh beans, oh beans, oh god, ah! It's a lot. It's very intense. Like, my heart rate was, like, above 100 throughout this entire movie.
Yeah, and, like, that's the thing. You know, I think some traditional horror fans would look at this and go, oh, like, it doesn't have as many scary moments. But, like, what film other than maybe, like, The Exorcist has moments like this that you can point to and say, that will never leave my brain? And I will tell the two of you, at least, this scene will never leave my brain.
It's
it is
deeply
burned
upsetting.
in there forever. Yeah, it's such a good, like, well shot scene. So in the morning we have William letting out, everyone, and Black Phillip just attacks William. And I found myself rooting for Black Phillip.
I did
Maybe this
scream,
is...
get his ass.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe this is because I am the witch of the group and I was like, rooting for them.
Listen,
but...
at this point, it's hard to cheer for William.
Yeah.
I'm so
and this
pro-goat and anti-misogynist that
Yeah.
it was really difficult.
So this goat, like, fucking gores him and then knocks him into the pile of wood that he's been cutting.
Which, Chekhov's thing of wood.
It's so good! It's so good, because he picks up the hatchet, he's like, alright, I'm gonna fucking kick your ass, goat. And he's like, oh, wait, I don't feel so good. And then the goat slams him into that, and then he gets buried in all these fucking little,
like, all the logs.
All these logs that he's been chopping, and it's just like, ugh, that's good shit. I love that.
And we see the logs, like, for the first time, how many there were in this scene, and there are so many.
It's like hundreds. It's an incredible number, and he just gets fucking buried under them. And it's just, you can read that scene in so many ways. It's like his own, like, pent up emotions and anger and, like, inability to communicate with his family, and he's, like, literally being buried under the product of all his bad decisions. Just
so good.
It owns so bad.
I love the idea of Black Phillip going, wait, I can make some poetic irony.
I'm not just gonna step on him. Hold on.
I can do better.
You're the one that says demons are little scamps.
Oh no, this is not me being upset with the movie. Demons are little scamps.
So, Catherine comes out, and so Thomason has just witnessed this. The twins are gone. We have no idea.
Thank
They're
Christ.
gone.
Well, also, like, the little prison that their dad built for them has been busted open.
Yep. And so we assume that's by the witch, who presumably took these children. And you know what? I feel bad for her. Because imagine what she had to hear all the way back to the house.
I like to picture she murdered them immediately.
No, I feel like poetic irony is Mercy is a witch. She's actually the leader.
The witch, like, pulls off, like, a skin, like, mask.
So it ties into Catch. She unzips.
Oh.
And
It's just a very small Mercy.
It doesn't even make sense size-wise, but they don't, like, do anything about it. She deflates.
It's some Scooby-Doo shit, and it's great.
Yep. So Catherine instantly comes out, accuses Thomason of killing the twins and being a witch, and she just starts fucking attacking her. She starts choking her, and then Thomason picks up a knife, slashes her in the face with it, and is, like, very clearly just trying to get her off. Like, Thomason's not really trying to hurt her mother, and, like, you can see how upset she is. Like, it's just hard. It's really hard to put yourself in this person's shoes, but, like, oh my God, I can't even imagine. And so then Catherine decides to choke Thomason to death. And Thomason realizes what she has to do and ends up stabbing her mother to death. And, like, just sits and, like, cries in that with her mom. And I truly think the actress who plays Thomason is a revelation in this movie. And the fact that basically this last 20 minutes or so is just really her, it speaks to that. And, for all of our comic book nerds out there, she is the perfect Magic from the New Mutants. And I'm sad that I can never watch that movie because I know it will be a dumpster fire.
Yeah, the universe kept it away from us and we didn't understand why, but the universe was trying to be kind.
It was trying to protect us. So Catherine is dead. Thomason finally gets up, goes back into the house, and is, like, packing up. And she's kind of left with no good decision, right? Like, does she go back into town and try to, like, explain, like, my family's all dead? And so instead, she starts hearing a noise in the goat pen. And she decides to go that way. And while in the goat pen, she asks Black Phillip to speak to her. She's like, look, you talked to my sister. Is this true? And we get nothing for a minute. And, like, it's a very quiet scene. And you see, like, this, like, deflation. And then you hear this, like, voice ask, what do you want? And Black Phillip asks if she would like the taste of butter and a new dress. And you see her, like, thinking about it. And then the best scene in the entire film, which... I will be honest, I would answer yes to. So, of course, I am the witch. Wouldst thou like to live deliciously? Ah!
That's such a fucking banger of a line.
I wonder if there was one dude that went, can we please change that line? And everyone just looked at him and went, no!
No, you know what happened? They were all trying to come up with, like, the ending of this. Like, all, like, drinking or doing drugs, whatever. And they had the song Work Bitch playing. And they heard, you want to live fancy. And they were like, what if? Huh. And then they listened to it again. And they were like, how do we make this? And one of them said, wouldst thou like to live deliciously? And they all just, like, erupted into tears and wrote it down. That's my headcanon.
I am upset that you would even assume that the director would allow non-period accurate drugs on his set.
Okay, so it was the fungus from the fucking corn.
Everyone was getting lit off of mercury and just
doing lines of fungus.
Yeah.
We've all been there.
So she obviously says yes. And, like, honestly, who could blame her, right? Like, in this point, she is alone in the wilderness, you know, being a young girl with, like, out hunting skills. She can't grow anything. And so the devil, or Black Phillip, asks her to disrobe and write her name in the book. And she's like, hey, like, I don't know how to spell my name. And he's like, I'll guide your hand. And so she signs her name. He leads her into the forest, still in the form of the goat. And so we approach a bunch of women naked around the fire. They're having what's called the Black Sabbath, which is, like, the witches, perverting the Sabbath in order to, like, celebrate their demonic connection. And so they're all, like, naked around the fire. Thomasin joins them. At first, like, there seems to be, like, a little bit of hesitation, but then she walks right up. And so then they all start floating. And in the final scene, we see Thomasin, like, filled with, like, enthusiastic joy for literally the first time in the entire film. And she's lit in, like, orange, warm, like, positive lighting. And so this perfectly segues, because that's the last scene in the film, this perfectly segues me into one of my favorite things that I read about this film. And I'll go ahead and post a link for you guys. So this is a theory about the witch, and it's from creepycatalog.com, written by MJ Pack. And I gotta say, MJ, excellent. And so they compare the first and last scene, and I'm gonna drop it in our Skype chat, and I'll make sure to post it for all of you to see, because everyone needs to see this stark comparison to where we first see Thomasin and where she ends up. It's remarkable. And I just love the idea of, originally she's, like, you know, her hair's covered, she's in, like, all of these, like, restrictive clothing, and then in the end she's finally free. It's so good. All right, so talk to me. What do you guys think about this movie?
I mean, so the reason that I loved this, like, I follow a lot of, like, people in publishing and, like, authors on Twitter, and they had been talking about this movie because it's Halloween and they'd been watching it. And, like, I was wondering why all these, like, writers and, like, agents are, like, so jazzed about this movie. And having finally seen it, like, I completely get why. Because, like, this is like writing 101. Like, this is the perfect example of, like, basically, except for the rabbit, I think nothing goes to waste in this film. There's, like, all the loose ends get tied up, and, like, everything sort of works together. Like, it's just such a good execution and plot, and like you said, like it doesn't go for cheap like film stuff. It doesn't go for jump scares really. It's just a very good movie, and like I mean I don't know that I mean I would actually watch it again. I was very scared like throughout the whole thing. It's a very intense movie. I got caught up in it. Um, but just like the way that like there's like not an ounce of fat on this film, I was really impressed by it. I loved it.
I So I don't know how else to describe this, but this movie is a gourmet burger with peppers. And if you know me, to complete that analogy, its type has hurt me before, and I dislike its core parts, but I can understand that it's really well made and get why people would enjoy it. But it does make me want to leave a room when I encounter it. I it is done very, very well, and it is one of those movies, like, I hope that this director keeps on making movies, because it seems that, like, I said that, but then he made The Lighthouse. He's hurt me so bad, guys. He's hurt me in ways I can't describe.
I wish you had seen this film before The Lighthouse, because I feel like you might have had a more thorough enjoyment.
I think it would have made me dislike The Lighthouse more. Because this movie is so much better, and it was a lot better than I expected. And I thought that it covered a lot of themes really, really well, but I still couldn't shake the feeling that every once in a while the director would just look at me through the screen and go, "See what I did there?" And like that just was so off-putting to me. And I know it's me. I know it's a weird me thing. And commenters that we never listen, dude who dislikes every single one of our videos. This one's fair. I deserve this one. But yeah, it just didn't work for me. This type of stuff never does.
With love, if someone's constantly disliking our stuff, it is not it is not either of the ones that have the voice of podcasting. It is the one with vocal fry, let's be real.
Michael, all of our voices sound bad.
Disagree. So I actually think that this film was pretty artful in how it handled its like subtext. And so Aaron said his internet died. We'll have to go on without him. So welcome to my brother and me.
Yeah, so the Bears, the Vitch got Aaron. We were playing peekaboo.
So I'm going to be honest with you all. I was playing peekaboo with my brother and Aaron, and I did not expect it to go this way because in the film, the youngest brother disappears. But in actuality, it's the one with the purest heart, so Aaron had to go.
Yeah, that is true. He was too good for this world.
Too good for this world. So I will go ahead and carry on. So with that same creepy catalog article I was talking about, and I'm going to link all of these in the show notes. So the writer of this article theorizes that what actually let the devil in was Thomasin admitting her sin and asking for forgiveness. So we don't actually see anyone else in this film admitting they're wrong until bad things start happening. Thomasin is the only one who admits wrong before she's been punished or caught.
Huh.
So the writer of this believes that that's what let the devil in is the devil saw like the perfect example of like purity and, religiosity and said, "That's my in, I'm going for her." And then worked to separate her. And I think one reason I liked that theory a lot is my personal take on it was that if you are to recruit someone for witchcraft, Thomasin was your best choice.
Yeah.
She's the perfect age. She's all of these things, right? But also, in order to do that, you have to separate. And so in any haunting or demon story, you see a separation of the family. You see an attempt to by an evil force to pull apart the family binds. Well, Thomasin already has a strained relationship with her mother. Her brother is lecherously looking on her. Her younger siblings are like unleashed hellions.
Yes.
And her dad is an emotionally stunted, like, pride monster. So, of course, she's the one. And my theory of it was that the devil, or Black Phillip, was using everyone to separate them. So I think perhaps the kids maybe heard something from Black Phillip, but I don't think he was talking to them in the way that he talks to Thomason. I think Thomason is the first person that truly heard the voice of Black Phillip.
I think that's a really interesting take.
Yeah, I mean, I've just spent a lot of time thinking about this film since I watched it, both the first time and this time, and I really like the idea that, you know, there's this grand plan, like a master plan, and like nothing happens by accident, both directorially and then also with like the recruitment, right? Like, almost set up in, like, I read a review as I was compiling my notes and I was writing this take. Oh, perfect.
Hey,
Aaron, you're back.
The Vitch brought you
Yeah,
back.
sorry. Thank you. I had to chop up an infant, but yeah, the internet's working again.
No big deal. I was just going through my theory of the film. If you want to hear it, I can say it a second time.
No, I'm gonna be editing this podcast, so I'll hear it.
You'll hear it. Well, I just like to get everyone's reaction. But I do have some additional fun facts for you all, other than the flying ointment likely being lube and the lack of any additional light or electronic instruments in the film. And, of course, the hallucinogenic fungus. So, the witch hunts. We've got to talk about them. We've got to talk about the witch hunts that, of course...
We all know them. We all love them.
Yes.
You know them. You love them. You participated in them once or twice.
So in the years between 1580 and 1630, and this film is around 1620 in its setting, an estimated 50,000 people were put to death for accused witchcraft. 80%
That's
of
a
whom
lot.
were women. Yeah.
That's so many.
And most of them were over 40. And so...
That seems rude.
Yeah. And so modern historians do better. I have to ask you to do better. Because
I'm trying.
Apparently there's a lot of debate that this can't solely be from misogyny because women accused other women of witchcraft.
All right.
Hashtag not all women.
I mean, for real.
Oh my god, that's such a bad take.
So do you want to hear something that is utterly disturbing? In the book of Exodus, where it says to not suffer a witch to live, that translation is almost certainly wrong.
Oh no.
The word that they were translating was poisoner. So the witch trials, the entire 50,000 people dead because of a typo.
Michael, I mean, I think we've talked about that in our Bible ranking podcast, but I think we know that even if it was a typo, somebody was probably like, nah, let's just make it more advantageous for me.
Yeah.
Well, that is also how the Crusades started, where Pope Urban was like, hey, let's go hang out in Jerusalem. And everyone was like, let's go conquer somewhere else.
I mean, that's how the Fourth Crusade happened.
Yeah, I mean...
But the first ones were very much, let's do harm to brown people.
Well, the first one was, hey, can I get 2,000 knights? And all of Christendom was like, well, let's be mean, though.
So, I have to say this is probably my favorite film we've reviewed. And that actually does include The Exorcist. I just enjoyed this because it has none of that, like, 70s filmmaking baggage.
Yeah, definitely.
There weren't any actual medical procedures done on screen, from what I understand.
Yeah. But what would you guys rate this film? And then I'll reveal what we're watching next week.
I'm gonna give it, I think, The Taste of Butter.
That's pretty good. I'm going to give it Station 10. Jesus is stripped of his garments because, like our protagonist, it did make me want to strip off all my clothes and run free through the woods.
I thought that was a reference to our first ever boobies.
Also that.
We did it, boys.
I have to give this 4 out of 5 he-goats possessed by Satan.
No, that's a pretty high rating, Michael.
Yeah, I feel very positively about this film. And the perfect segue is, do you guys want to know what we're watching next?
I'm very nervous.
Yeah, I'm crossing my fingers.
So I've gone back and forth on this one, and I knew I wanted to make us watch a classic horror film.
No.
So I've decided to take it back, and we're going to watch a film by someone I hate and will not suffer any defense of, but I think the acting is impeccable, and I think the story is still gripping. We're watching Rosemary's Baby.
God
Oh,
damn it.
yeah, I should have known. Yeah,
Yeah, you did warn us of that.
you did say that before, yeah. I don't know. I've heard a lot about it. It seems like it's supposed to be good.
I know
It's a great film.
I know the gist, but like we're watching the old, like the OG, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, just making sure.
We're not doing bad remakes here. My other pick was going to be The Wicker Man, and again, I was going to make us watch the original.
Oh, no, Nicolas Cage though.
We could have talked
Nope.
about the bees and everything.
We're not watching any Nicolas Cage remakes are on a moratorium on
Yeah,
this.
Yeah,
we
he
saw-
is still in
that's fair.
timeout. Nicholas, he knows what he did, and he's still in timeout for it.
And he might be in permanent timeout. We might not let him
This
out.
is actually, I think this is how Catholicism came up with purgatory.
Somebody adapted Left Behind really bad. And the Pope
And
was
then-
like, no, we can't do this anymore.
You don't deserve hell, but what do we do with you?
Someone screamed, "Not the bees," and enough was had.
Oh, all right. Well, I'm looking forward to that next week. Gentlemen, where can people find you and your stuff on the internet?
I am at Green History on Twitter. I also do a podcast where if you enjoyed me being upset with some of this movie's weirdness, but you want to watch me get really angry about this director's choices, listen to They Done Goofed, the episode where we talk about The Lighthouse and about Willem Dafoe coming on Robert Pattinson's face.
Where can people find that?
On We Done Goofed Twitter channel. YouTube. I got there at the end. I knew it was wrong, and my brain wasn't helping.
That's why I stayed silent. I was like, I'm just going to let you.
He'll work himself out. He'll get
So
there.
good.
He'll get there. You can find me on Twitter at Michael's Diamonds.
You can find me on Twitter at AaronSXL. You can also find my other podcast that I do with my friend Layla at Mortified Pod on Twitter. And you can also find it on your podcasters because that's a real podcast, which I'm excited about. And we're talking about Code Lyoko tomorrow, which is going to be so good. I can't wait for that one. That show is even wilder than some of the shit we watch here. So,
As a listener, I am very excited.
yeah, it's going to kick ass. Everyone, while I am still wiping the tears of joy from my eyes after watching this film, I just like you all to keep in mind that it is okay to cry, because even Jesus wept. We'll see you all next week.